Hey, everybody. Welcome to Be Our Guest, a weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Dev Janki. I am the artistic director of Live and in Color. We are a not-for-profit theater company based in New York and Connecticut, and we develop new plays and musicals that promote and celebrate diversity. While we dearly miss being able to sit next to each other in theaters, the show must go on. Live and in Color recently commissioned a team of 7 incredibly talented playwrights to write a series of short plays specifically for a virtual format. Tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern Time will be the world premiere of Days of Recreation on Live and in Color's Facebook and YouTube pages. For more information on how to reserve a free ticket, head over to our website, theaterincolor.org. Now, get ready for a very special episode of Be Our Guest with the playwrights behind Days of Recreation. Grab a cocktail and start leaving your questions in the comments. These artists are so accomplished that it would take me all day to share their amazing credits. Please do yourself a favor and check out their bios on our website. Now, please help me welcome the incredible BD Wong. Hi.
Hi. Hi, Jeff.
Masi Asare. Hello, hello. SEVAN.
Hello.
Nandita Shenoy.
Hello.
AriDy Nox.
Hi.
And Erlina Ortiz.
What's up?
Hi, friends. Oh, thank you
Hi.
for being here. How is everyone?
Very good. Good to see
Cheers.
you. Glad to be here.
I should mention that we are missing our 7th playwright, the wonderful Lauren Yu. And she's written, there she is. She's written a truly beautiful play. And I'm very excited for all of you to see it tomorrow evening. Thank you all for being here. It's so great to see all your beautiful faces. And I'm so excited for everyone to see your work tomorrow evening. I just want to start off by saying, while 2020 has been a year full of fear and conflict, we've also seen it be full of revolution and rebirth, which is the inspiration behind this virtual play. For our viewers, each playwright was given a prompt from the 7 days of creation from the book of Genesis, and then wrote a 10-minute play on the theme of recreation. BD, I want to start with you. Your play starts the evening tomorrow evening. Can you talk a little bit about how the theme of light and dark, which was from the first day of the book of Genesis, inspired your piece entitled 3 Karens?
3 Karens. Well, you know, my first starting point was this idea that recreation is of the moment, like this idea that we're answering the question of what will we do next if given the remote possibility or opportunity to recreate. How would we actually do that, and what would that mean, and what is it that we're actually everything that recreation connotes as a word, not necessarily biblically, but just as a word of recreation. And I think that seemed, from what I got from you, it was the kind of the origin of the whole idea. Let's talk about what we're going to do next. This whole idea that we are doing virtual work, and that kind of was a springboard for this whole thing of what we're going to do. So I just wanted to try to think about what my feelings were in the moment, about what I felt we were in the moment of trying to move through or move past, or I don't know, and so the whole notion of what it means to be a Karen came about, and our play is chock full of Karens. It's 3 Karens, and they are 3 women who are Karens in one way or another, and you know, it's just kind of an opportunity to discuss in a very short format some of the conflicts and questions and the juiciness of the conflicting humanity that surrounds our different points of view at this time, exacerbated by the pandemic and the creation of, you know, the whole upswelling of protests and all that stuff. This is too long an answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's great.
but really it came about from my thinking about how I felt right in the moment.
And in fact, like all 7 plays are just such unique individual stories. Everyone's perspective on their particular day was it's fascinating what came out of all your heads. Masi, what was it like for you specifically writing for the virtual format?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, there's a siren going by, so just FYI, that may be adding to the soundtrack. I think I was really glad, Dev, that you asked us to write something for the virtual format. And I just want to say I'm so honored to be in the company of these amazing writers, and I'm so excited to get to see everyone's work. I feel honored to be in this group of writers. But I think, it's been really hard to think about what is the theater right now. It's been kind of a time of grieving for so many. I feel like I'm holding vigil, right, for the theater when it comes back. And it's hard to think about writing things. I have many things I'm writing / meant to be writing for the theater, but it's hard to know what future we're writing into. And so what I really liked about this is that you asked us to write into right now, not like someday when we'll be back on a stage or we'll be performing in some other context at a drive-through or whatever, but for right now. And right now, our theatrical, our lived, experience of being in relationship to other people is through this little box. And so in my play, there are people that are grappling with that in different ways. There's one character who's a mom with young kids, and she is camped out in her closet because that's the only place that she can be on the Zoom call to Zoom with her friends. So just the realities of when someone's screen freezes, or this is our context right now. And so I really appreciated the chance to write into that.
Did anyone else have any experiences, writing specifically for this format?
Sure. I mean, I already answered a question, but I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was really fun to kind of take all the, like Masi was saying, take the frustrations that we experience and theatricalize them. The phenomenons that are built into the Zoom format can be actually kind of theatrical if you employ them in a certain way. And so I think that was fun to try to figure out.
Go ahead.
I was just going to ditto that. I definitely almost immediately as a sci-fi geek was like, what does Zoom look like when you add sci-fi elements to it and play elements to it? And how can you explore how to make this thing that now has become part of most everyone's daily lives weird? How can you make it a little more enjoyable by extrapolating it? And I mean, I feel like that's what I try to do with theater too, of how do you make regular life strange? How do you go to a step aside of it or above it or around it to explore it deeper? And doing that with a virtual level is different, but it uses some of the same tools, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. SEVAN, can you share with our viewers how your personal writing process changes when you are writing commission work versus writing for yourself?
Oh gosh, I don't know if there really was much of a difference in terms of this piece, or really, thankfully, the pieces that have been commissioned over the summer, because now everyone's sort of jumping on the virtual theater bandwagon, which has been great. I'm glad I can pay the bills. Thank you, more please. What's been lovely is that we each one has come with a prompt of some kind, and then we're free to pick the context of the characters and the story, which has been sort of really, really nice. But it's also been really helpful having that prompt, because we're sort of in a time where trying to be creative and generative of new ideas can be difficult, because frankly, all I want to do is lay on the couch and watch Agatha Christie mysteries. So it's sort of nice to have a little bit of a needle to make you go, okay, well, what could I write that would fit into this? So it's been good. And the really, really fun challenge has been, how do I write for the virtual scenario, knowing that it's virtual and not trying to hide from it?
Yeah, absolutely. Nandita, your play is set in a futuristic sci-fi universe, yet it seems more current than ever. What do you think it is about this genre that attracts so many writers?
Sci-fi. I mean, well, at this point, as you know, I am not a sci-fi writer at all. But what I guess for me, the prompt led to two questions. One was like, what if this is all there is? Because I think at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone was like, oh, it'll be like 2 weeks. And then you're like, it'll be 4 weeks. And it's like, wow, we don't really ever know when it's going to end. And I do think that Zoom is kind of becoming a part of our lives. I don't think that once, there's a vaccine or whatever, then nobody will Zoom ever again. I think it's just going to be a part of our lives, a very integral part of our lives. And so I was like, what does that turn our future into, which is very different than what I would have imagined our future would be 6 months ago. And so that kind of projected me into the future. Also climate change. I was really upbeat when I was writing this play. And then I guess the other question was, how would it evolve and change as we use it more, and how do we evolve and change as we use it more? Because when I was writing the play, I was really missing, like in the theater or just in normal life, I touch people, I shake hands, I hug people. We, all of us actors are always kissing each other. So, and that's all gone. And I don't touch many other people anymore. And that has really had, I think, a really deep effect on me. And I was trying to speak to that in my play. And also just to emphasize that was to, again, project into the future and see if we just keep going on like this for generations, what will happen.
Absolutely. AriDy, you also write futuristic shows, and I know you believe that creating a future in which marginalized people are free requires radical imagination. Can you explain how this belief lives in your work?
Yeah, I love that you just quoted my artist statement.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry. I can explain how
just how it lives in your work. How
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that has always drawn me to, I'm a huge Octavia Butler fan, and I'm actually in this book club right now, and a lot of people are mad at me because they hear about Octavia Butler being so great, but what people fail to warn people about Octavia Butler sometimes is that she is so depressing, and that she takes this very practical approach to the future and and what we could be facing. And in her interview, she talks about because Parable of the Sower in particular is sometimes called prophetic. She talks about she's not a prophet. She can't see the future. What she does is study the past, and she studies us, and then she extrapolates from there. And as a huge admirer of her work, I think that's something that I naturally do too. I try to look at what's happening and then think about what happens if it keeps happening.
Mm-hmm.
And also what happens if it doesn't keep happening. I think that's what the radical imagination part is. It's what if we stop doing this? What does the world look like then? And exploring both of those is some of my favorite parts of writing. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Erlina, can you share your little story about why you decided to begin writing plays in college?
Yeah, sure. So I went to Temple University, and recently I answered, somebody asked me, what was your experience at Temple like? And I answered by saying, I made the most of it that I could. And someone was like, that's a diplomatic answer. It kind of was plagued by all the same problems that most university systems are, of, as a Latina person, not really seeing myself represented, not really seeing opportunities for myself to grow, especially because at the time I very much was I'm a performer. So my good friend now, at the time, barely acquaintance, Gabriela Sanchez, came up to me and was like, I'm starting a theater company. Do you want to join? And I was like, yeah, okay, sure. She's very specific. Like, we're going to be a multicultural theater company, and we're going to build things the way we want things to be. And I had already sort of interned and seen sort of the behind the scenes of other companies. So it's kind of like, okay, I think I might have some of the skills for this. I was also the president of my sorority, so I knew how to think. So yeah, we kind of just started Power Street Theater, and I started writing because we had a playwright who was going to write the piece that we were sort of devising together, and then she kind of wasn't really involved anymore, wasn't really showing up, and we were like, all right, well, what are we going to do? And I had kind of always been a writer, but never a playwright. So I sort of kind of looked at the bigger picture and was like, okay, I'm going to stop focusing on, I want to perform really, really badly in this piece. And I realized like the power that I have as a writer in this moment. Like, I can create these characters. I can tell this story. So I just literally used every last detail that I had learned at Temple, and just as a creative person my whole life, and wrote that first play. And from there, after we saw that people came, Latino people of color came to this show. We presented in North Philadelphia. And after being told for so long that Latino people don't come to the theater and that there's no audience for them and all of that stuff, and seeing it and being like, oh, wait a second, like, this only took so much effort and we just filled this place and people are talking Spanish in the hallway on the way to the bathroom. So from there, I was pretty much hooked, and I realized, like, I'm going to keep working for this. And so now, pretty much I've just always had a chance to see my plays performed, which is not much that a lot of playwrights could say. And having the chance to have an audience, and that's cool. I didn't know that was possible. So yeah, I feel I'm very thankful to have had the support of people behind me who were like, you're a playwright, write this play, you know what you're doing, like, trust in yourself. I actually didn't start calling myself a playwright until I had to written my third or fourth play. So it took me a little bit to finally be like, okay, yes, like, this is something that I'm claiming, and that I'm good at this. All right, like, how can I continue to pursue this? So, and Power Street is still going, and I'm co-artistic director, and we got classes now, we have community events. Well, everything's sort of weird because of, all this. But
well, it seems like you, along with everyone else here, wear so many different hats. And a theme I see here is that I think everyone here started out as a performer and somehow found their way into being behind the scenes and creating, which, can anyone speak to that a little bit, just in terms of, AriDy, were you a performer? I don't know that.
Yeah, I was shaking my head to say, no, I was not. I
okay.
deeply admire performers.
For everyone else,
I was not one.
On stage. And just the idea of, creating stories that we didn't see when we were working, I feel like is an important part of why you started writing. Can anyone speak to that?
Yeah.
I mean, that's why. That's sort of why I started writing. I mean, to a degree, like, I was shoved into the writing pit very accidentally. Like, it wasn't really sort of a plan when I came to New York. But I remember, like, my first equity gig, actually Nandita directed. And I remember like being in the show going, oh my God, there's someone who's of my culture who's directing me, which I'd never had in my life. And I've never had since, which has sort of been a problem.
Aww.
I know. I've been like, what?
That's so sad.
I did, yes. So I remember when I first started writing, I was, as an actor, I surprisingly wasn't more concerned about writing for myself. I had so many talented friends and directors of color that I knew that I just wanted to write for them, because I felt like they exist, they were real, they were talented, but they weren't being given a spotlight to do things, which I thought was ridiculous. At that time, I didn't quite understand the politics of theater in the American theater. I do now, so I can understand why I may have been naive about it, but it sort of hasn't stopped me from wanting to keep writing work, because I think there are so many of us that are talented, that are worthy, that are deserving of it, who keep getting overlooked. And
I know we were very lucky to get all of you to write these plays, because even though there's this pandemic going on, apparently all of you are crazy busy with other projects. BD, I know you've been doing a ton of virtual stuff, but I wanted to talk a little about you're working on the musical adaptation of Mr. Holland's Opus with the amazing, there you are, in a workshop with the amazing Wayne Barker. Can you tell us a little bit about the project?
Wayne and I had written one other show together. Wayne is my best friend and collaborator, composer. And then it's a long story, but we stumbled upon the rights to Mr. Holland's opus. Weren't sure whether it was our dream project or not. And it grew on us so quickly that we wrote the first draft of the show really quickly for that workshop, which was at a college in Southern California. And since then, we've just gained a certain amount of momentum, which came ground to a halt right in March. But we did have gained a certain amount of momentum and have written a full show that is ready to be done. We had our first production on the schedule at Ogunquit Playhouse in Maine. And fingers crossed for all the theaters across the country and their survival. But particularly that one, and as far as we're concerned, hoping that one day that they actually will get back around to doing the show. But it has been, I guess my main answer to that question is that the whole notion of mentorship and all the teachers that I had that influenced me throughout my life, all of this backlog, my cache of experience with teachers and with teaching just kind of flooded back into my consciousness when I started working on the show and created a sense of my own point of view about what it means to work with people, the younger people in the younger generation, and what to say and what not to say to them, and all of those things that you don't always think about unless you're writing a character that is deeply embroiled in that particular process. And that has been really rich for us. The two of us have enjoyed many different workshop kind of situations in which we are actually workshopping the show with students. It's a perfect show to do that with. And so we've kind of had this parallel kind of Mr. Holland kind of experience with as many students in various places in the country as we workshop the show. And while we're having that experience, we're working on the show, we're developing the show. And so it's kind of a win-win situation, where we have this really creatively rich experience, and that we get to embody some of the principles that we've written into the show by working with students. That's been the most unexpected and the most valuable experience part of the development process for us.
Well, I was fortunate enough to see several of the readings, and I can't wait for the world to see that particular musical because it's great.
Thanks.
Speaking of development, Masi, your show, The Family Resemblance, there it is, was one of the first shows we developed at Live and in Color. How does being part of a developmental process help you further realize your vision?
Yeah, it's really amazing to see that photo. I really was so grateful to have that development process with you, Dev. And I also am grateful for the leap, I don't know if I should say this, but for the leap of faith that you had in me, because I remember I came to you and it was early I think I was only the second show that you all had developed as a musical. And I had not that much of the show. And you asked me can you write fast? And I was like, yeah, I can write fast. And then by the end of the summer, we had a draft and we did. I really appreciated, I'm grateful for the vote of confidence. Development is vital. You don't know what you have until you hear it with the actors in the room. It's part of what makes it an adventure to be developing musicals in the age of Zoom. I actually am a musical theater writer at first. And I was thinking to mention, now I'm just rambling, but here we are, I'm rambling. Yeah. When you were talking about beginning as a performer, I was a performer for a hot second, but I actually came to writing dialogue and plays secondarily because I'm a composer and lyricist first. And I think not being able to find a way to tell the kinds of stories that I wanted to tell is what led me to experiment with the rhythms of dialogue, right, and of story arcs in a different way than I necessarily had. But you don't know what the thing is until you hear it aloud with people. And I remember it was one of the very first just dialogue scenes I had written that we developed, Dev, from The Family Resemblance. And I remember just feeling I know what it's like when you write a song and then it comes to life. I'm familiar with that. It's exciting. But the fact that people were just speaking words and it just kind of inflated, and there was this architecture and there were tensions between them. It was so magical to me. And I was kind of hooked from that moment on. That's not sure that's the best answer, but
no, it's great.
Yes, development is essential.
SEVAN, you are also a Live and in Color alum, having developed your play Narrow Daylight at last year's retreat. Your plays have also been produced in London. How do audiences' reactions differ in the two locations?
Theater is very different in London than it is in America. Audiences in London love subtext more than they do. Like the American notion of like making everything apparent and transparent and being vocal and honest about things just does not fly well. But what was good about being in London was learning a different way of approaching theater making and writing, because they're all about destroying and playing with structure and form and making everything as subtextual and ambiguous and theatrical as possible. So it was interesting getting to sort of like marry those two and find where the happy ground was between the two of them. Also, as we all know, this London audiences aren't as effusive as American audiences. So to get a standing ovation in London, forget it. You're lucky if you get one. But I will also say that London audiences tend to be trained a little bit more in going to see theater. Like one thing that really surprised me was that a play or musical could get 5, 2, and 1 stars, and it won't shut down. People will still go see the shows and the musicals because they want to have their own opinion. And because theater is such an ingrained part of their history, they will go see all kinds of theater. There's also a pub culture, pub theater culture, which is literally theaters above pubs, which is all around the UK, not just in London. So there's theater happening everywhere, every single day of the week, every weekend. It does help that they're subsidized, so they can do that. Yeah. That is the one thing I miss about being in London, is getting money to create theater. But yeah, I don't know. There's sort of a weird sense of freedom of creating work there and being able to take risks that I wish happened more often here.
Yeah, yeah. Nandita, your show Rage Play made the 2020 Kilroy's list honoring plays written by female, trans, and non-binary playwrights. This year, they paid special attention to productions that were canceled due to COVID-19. You spoke a little bit about this before, but how do you think the stories we see on stage will be different once theaters open?
I don't know. I mean, I think that what we have just gone through is just going to inform what we do next and what we create. I mean, I think obviously these 7 pieces that you've commissioned are, just the harbinger of that. I also think that I don't think that Zoom theater is going to go away. Once we are able to get back in the theater, and we all want to, but I don't think that this is going to then disappear. And so, because I think it's a way to access more audiences, touch more people, connect with more people. And in a way, I mean, that's really exciting to me, of being able to, I mean, this opportunity, the world premiere tomorrow, friends from all over the country are going to be able to see my work who've never been able to see my work before. So, so I think there are really exciting things about that. But I'm really looking forward to when we have more than just this box to play with, and our blocking will be like, hey.
AriDy, you were an MTF maker last year and developed an Afro-futuristic show with your collaborator Brandon Webster called Metropolis. There it is. What is it like for you? Right. Yeah. What is it like working with or without a collaborator?
Oh, so my master's is in musical theater writing from NYU, and it's a running joke that the master's is actually in collaboration, because you have to work with every single person in the program in order to graduate, and it teaches you how to be able to collaborate with anyone. For me, and I was just talking about this, that there's something really beautiful in theater to me. My day job is an activism job, so I was relating it to activism, that theater isn't complete until you collaborate. So like, even when I don't have a collaborator, I'm gonna have 6 collaborators when the show is brought into fruition. It's just like when that collaboration starts and who that collaboration is with differs. And there's something really beautiful to me that like, something is not alive until I collaborate with other people, because that's like true of the world. like movements aren't real and change isn't real unless you can get other people to get on board and help you create it. And I love writing by myself. I love having complete and total control over my worlds. I'm a world builder. I'm really detail oriented. I love people not touching things. I also love not having the choice of not letting people touch things, of having to sit in a room and let someone do something that I would have never thought of. And when they suggest it to me, it sounds not right. And then watching it happen and it be way better than anything I could have imagined, because it's this combination of what we can do and what we can imagine. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if that properly answers the question, but yeah.
Totally. I think all of us as artists have that experience of loving working with people and hating it at the same time. Erlina, speaking of working with a lot of people, you founded Power Street Theater. You spoke about a little bit about it before, which makes theater accessible to communities in North Philadelphia. Why did you start this company?
Well, technically the company was already started when I joined. It hadn't done, like, they had only had a couple of meetings and there hadn't been a show or anything like that had happened yet. But I joined on with the mission as basically like, hey, do you want to help us make this happen? And now go back to
why did you start the company? You know,
why?
Yeah.
Okay, well, why did I stay involved? Like, why did I not just say, okay, let me try to get what I can out of this and peace out? I mean, I think part of that was just like the realization of how much more you can accomplish with a team, and that and also it was just like my relationship that I ended up building with Gabriela Sanchez, which was, I realized that we were really good complements to each other, where she had strengths or where I could push her. You know, she pushed me, and we had that partnership. So I think that I very much felt a sense of anything that I could have accomplished by myself is not going to be as great as anything I can accomplish with this partnership and with this team. And also just like the mission behind it, it's hard to sort of overstate what it's like to someone who's loved theater their whole life and was always like the weird kid. So, you know, I mentioned earlier, I was part of a Latino sorority. Yeah. I was a part of Latino sorority at Temple, and that was because I didn't have any Latino friends in the theater department, really. And I needed that community. And my Latino friends really were like, you're so weird. It's probably because you're a theater person. And all my theater friends were like, you're so different. It's probably because you're Latino. So it was like, it's hard to overstate what it felt like to be at a theater party and dancing bachata. Like having those two worlds come together really felt like home in a way that nothing else had in the past. So honestly, I just kind of was like, I felt like every other purpose or every other thing that I ever wanted to do didn't feel as strong as what I wanted to do with Power Street. And because of the community, I was like, wow, like my mom came to the show and laughed at jokes in Spanish. Like that is just an experience that you can't like, you live with it forever. Even if it would have never happened again, I would have never forgotten that opening night of that first show. So yeah, I guess it just was kind of like that feeling of power, really. We're Power Street, right? So it was like that feeling of like, wow, look how much power we have if we stop waiting for other people to give us an opportunity or waiting for someone else to say yes. And if we just, with $1,000 with our first show and a bunch of volunteers of amazing people who were like, yes, I believe in this mission, we made it happen. And now we're actually, you know, for the first time ever making part-time salaries. So it only took 8 years.
Well, you're doing such incredible work. I want to throw this out to all of you. We always ask this question every week. Our mission at Live and in Color is to connect diverse communities to create new stage works. What does having a diverse working environment mean to you?
Oh my gosh, so much.
Go.
So much. I mean, I'll just say I really love being in the company of a diverse group of artists because it's like what AriDy was talking about, just that collaborative spirit is really wonderful when you have so many different points of view and different perspectives that I really appreciate, and which is why I like doing theater. Like I like being in the room and having that, just that like mashup. I just think having diversity in the room really adds to that and makes it wonderful. But then also, on the flip side, I think that having been in so much theater that is very white male driven, I haven't felt as much as I've had a voice. And I feel having a diverse room really has allowed a lot of people to speak, to offer their opinions, and to really participate, which is exciting to me, which is what I think theater should be.
Well,
I also just think that that diverse populations work differently than white. Like, diverse rooms work differently than white rooms. I don't know how to make that like a softer statement, but like I've been, the way that they operate, and this is obviously not true of all diverse rooms, but a lot of the experience I've had of like, in particular for me, having like Black women at the helm of productions, it's very different. It's like a whole different vibe. It's a different way of managing conflict. It's a different way of interrogating the text, of building community in the room. It's a different approach. And when I've had directors of other ethnicities, it's a different approach there too. That's still not the way that white people do it. So I just feel like there's something about the way that we grow up culturally, the way that we process theater in our own communities, that affects the way that we produce theater and the way that we make the way that we do storytelling. And it's like really beautiful to be able to experience it, especially when your work is like centered in that community and centered in that storytelling practicum. To have people who are already in that practice helping you bring it to life, I think it's like a booster. It just helps it.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
I often find it more relaxing.
much more.
That's a more succinct way of saying what I was saying too. Like, absolutely.
I mean, I just thought I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh God, I think most of the diverse work I've done in theater since I've moved to New York 10 years ago has all been in the last few months virtually. That's been like the most diverse work I've done, and there's less social, racial, and political navigating in the room that's happening. And it just feels like everyone is just like breathing and just relaxing into it, just doing the work, as opposed to having to do the work and thinking about relaxing and breathing and what someone is saying or not saying. And I wish, and rooms don't have to be like that. And I wish they didn't have to be like that. And I hope that eventually we get to the point where they're not like that. But I'm finding it very strange now to go from these diverse rooms that I've had virtually back to what I was used to having, because I'm just so much more relaxed and enjoying myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a great question, and like we could just talk all day about it. But since you asked really specifically like what it means to us, I'll just say it means feeling welcome. You know, like Erlina, your story about your mom coming to your show, and like it means that I feel welcome, and the people that I love, you know, will feel welcome. that's what theater should always be, but it isn't always. So that's why it's so vital. But the other thing I think a lot about is, you know, I'm also, I teach in a university setting. And so I think about this in my work in the classroom as well, is I feel like it's really important for our cameras. I don't know why my camera's going in and out. Sorry. I feel like it's really important for artists of all backgrounds to experience people that look like us. I'm looking at everyone's faces in positions of leadership and in positions of authority. Because people, the way our country is, I can't speak to the UK, but there are residences right all over the world. But the way this country is, people don't think that we are the leaders. And so to just be in a context where we are making the artistic decisions, we are clearly intelligent, we are clearly having aesthetic ideas and being inspired, and struggling, right? The whole gamut, but that we're able to be seen as leaders in a way, I think it's vital. I don't see how we're going to advance until people recognize that people who look like anybody, like all the different peoples, can have brilliance and can have leadership and can have authority.
And also stories to tell. You know, that I think that that's so important also. And just, you know, what are we hearing about? What are we talking about? What are we relating to? You know, so I just think it's so important. And the more diverse the room is, the more stories that come out. You know, whether it's the way that the lighting designer lights the piece, or the costumes, or the set, you know, there are so many different approaches. And I think the reason we are all attracted to theater is that collaborative aspect, but there's so much collaboration, so much more collaboration that could happen.
And as you said, we could go on and on about this all night. Let's take, I think we have a couple questions. Let's take a couple questions from our viewers. Let's see what's first. Alyssa says, have you all found quarantine creatively fulfilling? Do we have any new work to look forward to? Thank you so much.
No. I mean, I wish I could say, I mean, no, I haven't. You know, I'm a two-time war refugee. So at the start of the whole quarantine thing, I thought, this is fine. I've been through this. I can handle this. Like, I've been through the war. I've been through an escape to the desert. This is going to be cake. And about 4 months into it, I thought, oh, my limits have now been tested and broken, and I don't think I can handle this anymore. And trying to just sit down to write has been incredibly difficult and impossible. And the only way I've been able to do it is if someone's given me money or said, you have a deadline, you have no choice. So, which has been good, but I weirdly miss just sitting down to write, because I had the time and the impetus to do it. And I don't know if that will come back. And I don't know if I'm okay with that or not okay with that.
I feel super differently. I mean, you know, of course, I mean, only because at a certain point I realized that all I had was my creative brain. And then I thought, well, this is the only thing I have that I can depend on, that I know is going to be like it was yesterday. And I tried to tap into it. And so then I just was super creative, and whether I made, you know, terrible content as a result, I'm not sure, you know, but I was able to kind of feed myself through the most intense parts of the last summer with projects and things and ideas and things. But I do understand the kind of futile kind of feeling that also accompanies what we've been going through. You know, this sense that, well, why are we doing it? What are we doing it for? There's no theaters to produce this work. There's no audiences to go and witness it. So that's why I think this particular project is really rather valuable. It is a kind of a repurposing of an audience that's already there to theatricalize something that is not necessarily thought of or was intended to be theatrical, but to theatricalize it, and for us to try to theatricalize it as well as we can. So I hats off to this company and to Dev for putting this together, because we're at a moment now where I think we're really trying to figure out stuff, and we can't figure things out without experimentation and without failing and without, you know, picking ourselves up and throwing something at the wall and seeing what sticks. And so I think this is a very nice idea that we've all run with in whatever way we can. And I can't wait for people I can't wait to see everybody's play tomorrow, and I can't wait for other people to see too, because I think these ideas will feed other people's ideas about what the theater can be in the meantime. Mm-hmm. You know, it feels so terrible to call it theater in some ways, because we had such a reverent feeling about what it means to be in the theater, and there's a spirituality of being in person with the audience, and all of that stuff gets messed with in this situation. If you let that go and just talk about ideas, sharing ideas, and reaching people in whatever way you can, then I think you're onto something. And so I'm really excited to see how people respond to this.
Me too. Let's take one more question. Sorry. Do we have one more question? Quickly, Rayom. Name some playwrights that have influenced your writings.
Oh my gosh. I feel like whenever anybody asks me this question, all playwrights just fly out of my head.
I'm like, what is a playwright?
Yeah.
Well, I'll say some. Oh, do you go? Are you going, Nandita?
No, I mean, I can't even think of a playwright aside from the six of you.
Well, I'll say a playwright, but then
inspiration we need.
But then you'll be like, oh, go ahead, BD.
No, Masi, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I can say someone who's inspired me, but then like I'll say her name and you'll be like, what? When you see me play tomorrow? But I was fortunate to take a class with Adrienne Kennedy in college. She taught a class called Black Playwrights of the World. And all we did in this play was read plays aloud. And I was like 19 years old. And then when I moved to New York, Adrienne, I used to like meet up with her every now and then. So as a person, as like someone who was a playwright, I don't think I knew any playwrights, to be honest. Like, I don't think I knew any playwrights until I met Adrienne. And someone who actually looked like me and was like, had this brilliant mind and also like fearless mind, like the way that she thought about things and stories didn't have to be linear. It didn't have to follow, it could be something that you felt, not something that you like thought your way through, which like with my Ivy League school, it was all about thinking your way through stuff. And so I think she's someone who's inspired me as a person, even if it's not like you'd like, oh, Masi writes like Adrienne. So.
Well, I think you guys are going to inspire so many people tomorrow evening. It's been so much fun talking to all of you, but I'm afraid we're totally out of time. We've gone way over. But before we go, I want to remind everyone that you can experience the work of these beautiful people you see on your screen right now, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Eastern Time during the world premiere of
That's not dramatic enough.
Now at theaterincolor.org. You're not going to want to miss it. Also, be sure to tune in to be our guest next week when I will talk to Broadway actor from such shows as Hadestown, Once on This Island, Sunset Boulevard, and the founder of Black Theater United, the amazing T. Oliver Reed. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. And thank you, BD, Masi, SEVAN, Nandita, AriDy, and Erlina for joining me. I am just in awe of all of you and all your talent, and I'm so grateful for your work and your generosity and your beautiful spirit. BD, would you mind leading us in a little farewell sign-off toast?
I know you're doing that because you know I'll say to Dev Janki.
Oh!
Because you put us here, and I think you're really onto something, and I think it's very exciting. I think we're all, and on behalf of Lauren, who was our seventh sibling sister, who is not here, we love this company. I feel like I can speak for everybody. A toast to the company, a toast to Dev, and a toast to Days of Recreation tomorrow, and the future of what we're doing with our creativity and view of the theater, not knowing when it will be coming back. Here.
Cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.
See you tomorrow night. Woo-woo!